Winston-Salem plane crash. It was Saturday morning, November 19, 2022, just days before Thanksgiving. Joseph and Patty Crayer were flying from St. Louis, Missouri to Winston-Salem, North Carolina to visit their son and grandchildren, a trip they'd made several times before. Their aircraft, a twin-engine Piper PA-30 Twin Comanche, had departed around 6:30 a.m., stopping briefly in Kentucky before continuing east. It was a clear flight across the Appalachians, the kind of calm autumn morning perfect for private pilots. But as the aircraft approached Smith Reynolds Airport, something went wrong. At about 11:15 a.m., Joseph radioed air traffic control, reporting engine trouble and attempting a circling maneuver for another landing attempt. Moments later, radar contact was lost. Firefighters found the wreckage just a few miles from the runway, deep in a wooded area. Both Joseph and Patty were killed instantly. The NTSB investigation later confirmed the pilot had reported engine failure shortly before the crash, and there was no sign of disorientation or weather interference. By Monday morning, investigators were using cranes and heavy equipment to recover the aircraft's wreckage from the crash site. For the Crayers family, Thanksgiving that year meant setting two empty places at the table, a painful reminder that life can change between takeoff and landing. Macy's parade balloon accident. November 27, 1997. More than 1 million people lined Central Park West for the 71st annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Children waved as towering balloons floated between Manhattan's high-rises, among them the enormous Cat in the Hat, standing 78 feet tall. But the wind was relentless that morning, gusting between 40 and 50 miles per hour. The balloons strained against their ropes, and parade handlers fought to keep control. At 72nd Street and Central Park West, a powerful gust slammed the Cat in the Hat balloon into a lamppost. The impact sheared off the top of the metal pole, and the arm came crashing down onto the crowd below. It struck 34-year-old Kathy Corona, who was watching the parade with her husband and their 8-month-old baby. The blow fractured her skull and caused a massive brain bleed. She was rushed to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, where surgeons performed emergency surgery to remove a blood clot from her brain. While she didn't die, Corona fell into a coma for 24 days. When she finally woke, the injury left a permanent indentation in her skull and lasting neurological effects. 3 others were injured, including 44-year-old Maria Clohesi, who suffered a broken wrist and concussion but recovered. Despite the chaos, parade organizers chose not to stop the parade. The Cat in the Hat balloon continued down the route, battered but still flying. Texas Veterans Parade Train Crash. November 15, 2012. In Midland, Texas, the community was hosting its annual Hunt for Heroes parade, an event honoring wounded veterans returning from war, held just before Thanksgiving each year. 2 flatbed trucks carried veterans and their spouses. The first crossed the tracks safely. The second followed, unaware that a Union Pacific freight train was already approaching at 62 miles per hour. As the truck rolled onto the tracks, crossing lights began to flash. The horn blared. The engineer threw the emergency brakes, but the distance was too short. The train slammed into the float, tearing it apart. 4 veterans, Army Sergeant Major Lawrence Boivin, Army Sergeant Major William Lubbers, Marine Corps Chief Warrant Officer 3 Gary Stelfer, and Army Sergeant Joshua Michael, were killed instantly. Between 14 and 16 others were injured, including several spouses. Witnesses described chaos and disbelief. Heroes who had survived battlefields overseas were suddenly gone on home soil. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation later found that the city of Midland failed to notify the railroad and did not coordinate proper safety measures with Union Pacific, violating local ordinances. It was a tragedy born not of war or weather, but of seconds and silence between 2 systems that never should have failed. Like so many moments during the Thanksgiving season, the Hunt for Heroes parade meant to celebrate gratitude, instead became a monument to grief. While some families never made it to Thanksgiving dinner, others made it through, only to fall victim to the darkness that followed. The Black Friday. The Alabama Mall shooting. It was Thanksgiving night, November 22, 2018, at the River Chase Galleria Mall in Hoover, Alabama, one of the busiest shopping centers in the South. Families who had just finished dinner were now weaving through stores for early discount sales, laughing and carrying shopping bags. Then, just around 9:52 p.m., gunfire broke out near the Foot Action and JCPenney stores. 2 people were shot. 18-year-old Brian Wilson, twice in the torso, and a 12-year-old girl struck in the back. Panic erupted instantly. Hundreds of shoppers screamed and ran in every direction, diving for cover behind counters and displays. Amid the chaos was Amantic E.J. Bradford Jr., a 21-year-old from Hueytown who had enlisted in the Army. He did not complete service training and had returned home on leave to care for his father, a retired correctional officer battling cancer. Bradford legally carried a handgun that night, a right protected under Alabama law. When shots rang out, he drew his weapon and moved toward the commotion. He wasn't the shooter. But in those few seconds, officers arriving on scene saw him with a gun in hand and mistook him for the threat. One officer fired 3 times from behind. Bradford was struck in the hip, neck, and the back of his head. He died instantly. Within minutes, police realized the real shooter had escaped. Bradford, the man they killed, had nothing to do with the crime. The suspect, 20-year-old Aaron Brown, was arrested 4 days later in Georgia and charged with attempted murder for shooting Wilson. The city's official report later stated that Officer David Alexander believed Bradford posed an immediate deadly threat, and therefore acted within Alabama law. But the Bradford family and civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump rejected that conclusion, calling the act unjustified and racially motivated. Protests erupted across Hoover and Birmingham. Demonstrators blocked highways, shut down shopping centers, and demanded the release of the body cam footage. In 2019, the family filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Hoover, the officer, and the mall's owners. Years later, in April 2025, a federal court ruled the city and mall were not legally responsible. The Walmart Stampede. It was 5 a.m. on November 28, 2008, in Valley Stream, New York. The air was freezing, and more than 2,000 shoppers stood pressed against the glass doors of Walmart, waiting for the annual Black Friday sale to begin. They had been gathering since midnight, laughing, chanting, some pounding on the glass as the opening time drew near. Inside, workers had been warned the crowd looked dangerous. Among them was 34-year-old Jimitai Demore, a temporary employee hired just for the holidays. The moment the automatic doors unlocked, the crowd exploded forward. The metal frames buckled, the glass shattered, and the noise was deafening. Demore was instantly knocked off his feet and crushed under hundreds of rushing bodies. Other workers tried to pull him free, but the human wave was unstoppable. People kept pouring in, stepping over fallen signs, debris, and over him. Even after police arrived, shoppers refused to stop. Officers had to physically close the store, shouting for people to leave. By the time they reached Demore, he was gone. 4 others were hospitalized, including a pregnant woman who had been knocked down in the chaos. Investigators later found that Walmart had ignored repeated warnings from local police about crowd control. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration fined the company, calling the tragedy entirely preventable. The man who died that morning had been paid just above minimum wage to open the doors, and was killed doing exactly that. "How could you take a man's life to save $20 on a TV?" one Walmart employee said about Jimitai Demore, his deceased co-worker. It became the defining image of Black Friday, a crowd so desperate for discounts that it crushed a man to death before sunrise. The Zarate Walmart parking lot shooting. It was Friday afternoon, November 25, 2016, Black Friday, in San Antonio, Texas. The parking lot outside the Northwest Walmart Supercenter was overflowing with shoppers carrying boxes and bags, the air still heavy with the noise of post-Thanksgiving sales. Among them was 39-year-old Isidro Zarate, a husband and father who had just dropped his wife at the store entrance. Moments later, he saw a man in the lot grab a woman by the hair and start beating her in front of dozens of people. Zarate stopped his car, rolled down his window and shouted, "Take your hands off her." The attacker let go, but instead of backing away, he reached for a gun. Before Zarate could react, the man opened fire, shooting through the windshield and striking him in the head. The shooter, 21-year-old Teles Mondon Juarez, fled the scene as terrified shoppers screamed and ducked behind cars. Police tracked him down hours later and arrested him. He was charged with murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and later sentenced to life in prison. The woman Zarate tried to protect survived. Investigators later confirmed Juarez was her boyfriend, and that she had endured repeated abuse. Police credited Zarate's actions with saving her life. In the days that followed, candlelight vigils were held in that same Walmart parking lot. Friends and strangers alike described him as a man who did what we all wish we would have done. He had no weapon, no backup, just the courage to speak up. The Tandel family crash. It was Black Friday morning, November 23, 2012, on US 101 near the Embarcadero Road exit in Palo Alto. After an all-night shopping run in Gilroy, 48-year-old Arvind Tandel was driving his family home to San Bruno in a gold Lexus SUV. In the car were his 34-year-old wife and 4 daughters, ages 12, 20, 22, and 24. He'd had only 3 hours of broken sleep in the previous 24 hours. At 6:49 a.m., the Lexus drifted toward the right shoulder, where a California Highway Patrol cruiser sat with its arrow board flashing left. A CHP officer inside was assisting two stranded motorists, changing a tire on a disabled truck. The Lexus sideswiped the patrol car's left rear, launching the cruiser into one of the motorists and leaving the CHP officer severely injured. The Lexus then rolled repeatedly, up to 7 times, before coming to rest. 2 daughters were ejected onto the freeway. Nisha Tandel, 24, was pronounced dead at the scene. Sheetal Tandel, 20, died later that night at Stanford Hospital. Their mother suffered major injuries. A 12-year-old sister and 22-year-old Payal were hospitalized with injuries. Arvind was also seriously hurt. Investigators found no alcohol or drugs. The cause was fatigue. The 2 daughters who were ejected and died could not use their seatbelts due to overcrowding. A folded third-row seat had been used to make room for purchases, and so the 4 daughters were in a 3-seat row. The Santa Clara County District Attorney charged Arvind Tandel with 2 counts of misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter without gross negligence, calling the crash a preventable tragedy. Given his profound personal loss, prosecutors indicated they would not seek jail time, though license restrictions were expected under DMV rules. What began as gratitude on Thanksgiving turned into greed, and in the end, nothing on sale that day was worth a single one of their lives. If you'd like to see more true stories like this, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know which forgotten event you want to see next. Stay safe and have a blessed Thanksgiving.